This woman unwittingly gave Nazis the theory of the superior Aryan race, resurrected the ancient Indian emblem of the swastika, and even created a new religion in which she denied the Christian God, as well as unwittingly inspired the occultist of the Third Reich Adolf Hitler to monstrous experiments in concentration camps, and even in spite of this many famous historical figures dreamed of touching at least the hem of this woman's dress. Today we continue with Elena Blavatsky's book, The Secret Doctrine, which is the major work of this truly influential woman. The book presents secret knowledge about religion, philosophy, theosophy, esotericism and even physics, decades ahead of its time. Therefore, we strongly recommend that you read it attentively. Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back and we'll begin. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. The Secret Doctrine. Stanza 2. Where were the builders, the luminous sons of Manvantaric dawn? In the unknown darkness in their Ahai Paranishpana. The producers of form. From no form. The root of the world, the Devamatri and Svabhavat, rested in the bliss of non-being. The builders, the sons of Manvantaric dawn, are the real creators of the universe, and in this doctrine, which deals only with our planetary system, they, as the architects of the latter, are also called the watchers of the seven spheres, which exoterically are the seven planets, and esoterically the seven earths or spheres, globes, of our chain also. The opening sentence of stanza I, when mentioning seven eternities, applies both to the Matakalpa or the great age of Brahma, as well as to the solar pralaya and subsequent resurrection of our planetary system on a higher plane. There are many kinds of pralaya, dissolution of a thing visible, as will be shown elsewhere. Paranishpana, remember, is the summum bonum, the absolute, hence the same as paranirvana. Besides being the final state, it is that condition of subjectivity which has no relation to anything but the one absolute truth, Paramarthasatya, on its own plane. It is that state which leads one to appreciate correctly the full meaning of non-being, which, as explained, is absolute being. Sooner or later, all that now seemingly exists will be in reality and actually in the state of Paranishpana. But there is a great difference between conscious and unconscious being. The condition of Paranishpana, without Paramartha, the self-analyzing consciousness, Spasamvedana, is no bliss, but simply extinction for seven eternities. Thus, an iron ball placed under the scorching rays of the sun will get heated through, but will not feel or appreciate the warmth, while a man will. It is only with a mind clear and undarkened by personality, and an assimilation of the merit of manifold existences devoted to being in its collectivity the whole living and sentient universe, that one gets rid of personal existence, merging into, becoming one with, the Absolute, and continuing in full possession of Paramartha. Where was silence? Where the ears to sense it? No, there was neither silence nor sound, naught save ceaseless eternal breath, which knows itself not. The idea that things can cease to exist and still be, is a fundamental one in Eastern psychology. Under this apparent contradiction in terms, there rests a fact of nature, to realize which in the mind, rather than to argue about words, is the important thing. A familiar instance of a similar paradox is afforded by chemical combination. The question whether hydrogen and oxygen cease to exist when they combine to form water is still a moot one, some arguing that since they are found again when the water is decomposed, they must be there all the while, others contending that as they actually turn into something totally different, they must cease to exist as themselves for the time being. But neither side is able to form the faintest conception of the real condition of a thing. which has become something else, and yet has not ceased to be itself. Existence as water for oxygen and hydrogen may be said to be a state of non-being, which is more real being than their existence as gases, and it may faintly symbolize the condition of the universe when it goes to sleep, or ceases to be, during the nights of Brahma to awaken or reappear again, when the dawn of the new Manvantara recalls it to what we call existence. The breath of the one existence is only used in application to the spiritual aspect of cosmogony by archaic esotericism. In other cases, it is replaced by its equivalent on the material plane, motion. The one eternal element, or element-containing vehicle, is space, dimensionless in every sense, coexistent with which are endless duration, primordial, hence indestructible, matter, and motion, absolute perpetual motion, which is the breath of the one element. This breath, as seen, can never cease, not even during the pralaic eternities. But the breath of the one existence does not, all the same, apply to the one causeless cause or the all-beingness, in contradistinction to all being, which is Brahma, or the universe. Brahma, the four-faced god, who, after lifting the earth out of the waters, accomplished the creation, is held to be only the instrumental, and not, as clearly implied, the ideal cause. No Orientalist, so far, seems to have thoroughly comprehended the real sense of the verses in the Puranas that treat of creation. Therein Brahma is the cause of the potencies that are to be generated subsequently for the work of creation. For instance, in the Vishnu Purana the translation, "and from him proceed the potencies to be created, after they have become the real cause," would perhaps be more correctly rendered, "and from it proceed the potencies that will create as they become the real cause on the material plane." Save that one causeless ideal cause, there is no other to which the universe can be referred. Worthiest of ascetics, through its potency, i.e., through the potency of that cause, every created thing comes by its inherent or proper nature. If, in the Vedanta and Nyaya, nimitta is the efficient cause, as contrasted with upadana, the material cause, and in the Sankhya, pradhana implies the functions of both, in the esoteric philosophy, which reconciles all these systems, and the nearest exponent of which is the Vedanta as expounded by the Advaita Vedantists, none but the upadana can be speculated upon. That which is, in the minds of the Vaishnavas, the Vasishtadvaitas, as the ideal in contradistinction to the realer Parabrahman and Ishvara, can find no room in published speculations, since that ideal even is a misnomer, when applied to that of which no human reason, even that of an adept, can conceive. To know itself or oneself necessitates consciousness and perception. To be cognized both limited faculties in relation to any subject except Parabrahman. Hence the eternal breath which knows itself not. Infinity cannot comprehend finiteness. The boundless can have no relation to the bounded and the conditioned. In the occult teachings, the unknown and the unknowable mover, or the self-existing, is the absolute divine essence. And thus being absolute consciousness and absolute motion to the limited senses of those who describe this indescribable, it is unconsciousness and immovableness. Concrete consciousness cannot be predicated of abstract consciousness, any more than the quality wet can be predicated of water, wetness being its own attribute and the cause of the wet quality in other things. Consciousness implies limitations and qualifications, something to be conscious of, and someone to be conscious of it. But absolute consciousness contains the cognizer, the thing cognized, and the cognition, all three in itself and all three one. No man is conscious of more than that portion of his knowledge which happens to be recalled to his mind at any particular time, yet such is the poverty of language that we have no term to distinguish the knowledge not actively thought of from knowledge we are unable to recall to memory. To forget is synonymous with not to remember. How much greater must be the difficulty of finding terms to describe and to distinguish between abstract metaphysical facts or differences. It must not be forgotten, also, that we give names to things according to the appearances they assume for ourselves. We call absolute consciousness unconsciousness because it seems to us that it must necessarily be so, just as we call the absolute darkness because to our finite understanding it appears quite impenetrable. Yet we recognize fully that our perception, page 087, of such things does not do them justice. We involuntarily distinguish in our minds, for instance, between unconscious absolute consciousness and unconsciousness by secretly endowing the former with some indefinite quality that corresponds, on a higher plane than our thoughts can reach, with what we know as consciousness in ourselves. But this is not any kind of consciousness that we can manage to distinguish from what appears to us as unconsciousness. The hour had not yet struck. The ray had not yet flashed into the germ. The matrapadma had not yet swollen. The ray of the ever-darkness becomes, as it is emitted, a ray of effulgent light or life, and flashes into the germ, the point in the mundane egg, represented by matter in its abstract sense. But the term point must not be understood as applying to any particular point in space, for a germ exists in the center of every atom, and these collectively form the germ, or rather, as no atom can be made visible to our physical eye, the collectivity of these, if the term can be applied to something which is boundless and infinite, forms the noumenon of eternal and indestructible matter. One of the symbolical figures for the dual creative power in nature, matter and force on the material plane, is Padma, the water lily of India. The lotus is the product of heat, fire, and water, vapor or ether, fire standing in every philosophical and religious system, even in Christianity, as a representation of the spirit of deity, the active, male, generative principle, and ether, or the soul of matter, the light of the fire, for the passive female principle, from which everything in this universe emanated. Hence, ether or water is the mother, and fire is the father. Sir William Jones, and before him archaic botany, showed that the seeds of the lotus contain, even before they germinate, perfectly formed leaves, with the miniature shape of what one day, as perfect plants, they will become, nature thus giving us a specimen of the pre-formation of its production. The seeds of all phanerogamous plants bearing proper flowers containing an embryo plantlet ready formed. This explains the sentence, the Matri Padma had not yet swollen, the form being usually sacrificed to the inner, or root idea in archaic symbology. The lotus, or Padma, is, moreover, a very ancient and favorite symbol for the cosmos itself, and also for man. The popular reasons given are, firstly, the fact just mentioned, that the lotus seed contains within itself a perfect miniature of the future plant, which typifies the fact that the spiritual prototypes of all things exist in the immaterial world before these things become materialized on earth. Secondly, the fact that the lotus plant grows up through the water, having its root in the ilus, or mud, and spreading its flower in the air above. The lotus thus typifies the life of man, and also that of the cosmos, for the Secret Doctrine teaches that the elements of both are the same, and that both are developing in the same direction. The root of the lotus sunk in the mud represents material life. The stalk passing up through the water typifies existence in the astral world, and the flower floating on the water and opening to the sky is emblematical of spiritual being. Her heart had not yet opened for the one ray to enter, thence to fall, as 3 into 4, into the lap of Maya. The primordial substance had not yet passed out of its pre-cosmic latency into differentiated objectivity, or even become the, to man, So far, invisible profile of science. But, as the hour strikes, and it becomes receptive of the Fahatic impress of the divine thought, the logos, or the male aspect of the anima mundi, alaya, its heart opens. It differentiates, and the three, Father, Mother, Son, are transformed into four. Herein lies the origin of the double mystery of the Trinity and the Immaculate Conception. The first and fundamental dogma of occultism is universal unity, or homogeneity, under three aspects. This leads to a possible conception of deity, which is an absolute unity must remain forever incomprehensible to finite intellects. The idea of absolute unity would be broken entirely in our conception had we not something concrete before our eyes to contain that unity. And the deity, being absolute, must be omnipresent, hence not an atom, but contains it within itself. The roots, the trunk, and its many branches are three distinct objects, yet they are one tree. Say the Kabbalists, the deity is one, because it is infinite. It is triple, because it is ever manifesting. This manifestation is triple in its aspects, for it requires, as Aristotle has it, three principles for every natural body to become objective: privation, form, and matter. Privation meant in the mind of the great philosopher that which the occultists call the prototypes impressed in the astral light, the lowest plane and world of anima mundi. The union of these three principles depends upon a fourth, the life which radiates from the summits of the unreachable to become a universally diffused essence on the manifested planes of existence. And this quaternary, Father, Mother, Son, as a unity, and a quaternary as a living manifestation, has been the means of leading to the very archaic idea of Immaculate Conception, now finally crystallized into a dogma of the Christian Church, which has carnalized this metaphysical idea beyond any common sense. For one has but to read the Kabbalah and study its numerical methods of interpretation to find the origin of the dogma. It is purely astronomical, mathematical, and preeminently metaphysical. The male element in nature, personified by the male deities and logoi virage, Brahma, Horus, Osiris, etc., is born through, not from, an immaculate source, personified by the mother, for the abstract deity being sexless, and not even a being but beingness, or life itself, that male having a mother cannot have a father. Let us render this in the mathematical language of the author of the Source of Measures. Speaking of the measure of a man and his numerical, Kabbalistic, value, he writes that in Genesis, "Thus is repeated on earth the mystery enacted, according to the seers, on the divine plane." The Son of the Immaculate Celestial Virgin, or the undifferentiated cosmic profile, matter in its infinitude, is born again on earth as the son of the terrestrial Eve, our Mother Earth, and becomes humanity as a total past, present, and future for Jehovah, or Jod He Vow He, is androgyne, or both male and female. Above, the Son is the whole cosmos; below, He is mankind. The triad or triangle becomes tetractes, the sacred Pythagorean number, the perfect square, and a six-faced cube on earth. The macroprosopis, the great face, is now microprosopis, the lesser face, or, as the Kabbalists have it, the Ancient of Days, descending on Adam Kadmon, whom he uses as his vehicle to manifest through, gets transformed into Tetragrammaton. It is now in the lap of Maya, the great illusion, and between itself and the reality has the astral light, the great deceiver of man's limited senses, unless knowledge through Paramarthasatya comes to the rescue. The seven were not yet born from the web of light. Darkness alone was Father, Mother, Stabhavit, and Stabhavit was in darkness. The Secret Doctrine, in the stanzas here given, occupies itself chiefly, if not entirely, with our solar system, and especially with our planetary chain. The seven suns, therefore, are the creators of the latter. This teaching will be explained more fully hereafter. Svabhavat, the plastic essence that fills the universe, is the root of all things. Svabhavat is, so to say, the Buddhistic concrete aspect of the abstraction called in Hindu philosophy mulaprakriti. It is the body of the soul, and that which ether would be to Akasha, the latter being the informing principle of the former. Chinese mystics have made of it the synonym of being. In the Chinese translation of the Ekashloka Shastra of Nagarjuna, the Lung Shu of China, called the Yishu Lu Kio Lun, it is said that the term being or subhava, yu in Chinese, means the substance giving substance to itself. It is also explained by him as meaning without action, and with action the nature, which has no nature of its own. Subhava, from which svabhavat, is composed of two words, su fair, handsome, good, sva, self, and bhava, being or states of being. These two are the germ, and the germ is one. The universe was still concealed in the divine thought and the divine bosom. The divine thought does not imply the idea of a divine thinker. The universe, not only past, present and future, a human and finite idea expressed by finite thought, but in its totality, the Sat, an untranslatable term, absolute being, with the past and future, crystallized in an eternal present, is that thought itself reflected in a secondary or manifested cause. Brahman, neuter, as the mysterium magnum of Paracelsus, is an absolute mystery to the human mind. Brahma, the male-female, the aspect and anthropomorphic reflection of Brahman, is conceivable to the perceptions of blind faith, though rejected by human intellect when it attains its majority. Hence the statement that during the prologue, so to say, of the drama of creation, or the beginning of cosmic evolution, the universe, or the sun, lies still concealed in the divine thought, which had not yet penetrated into the divine bosom. This idea, note well, is at the root and forms the origin of all the allegories about the sons of God born of immaculate virgins. Stanza 3. The last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within without, like the bud of the lotus. The seemingly paradoxical use of the term, seventh eternity, thus dividing the indivisible, is sanctified in esoteric philosophy. The latter divides boundless duration into unconditionally eternal and universal time, kala, and conditioned time, kantakala. One is the abstraction or noumenon of infinite time, the other its phenomenon appearing periodically, as the effect of Mahat, the universal intelligence, limited by manvantaric duration. With some schools, Mahat is the firstborn of Pradhana, undifferentiated substance, or the periodical aspect of Mulaprakriti, the root of nature, which, Pradhana, is called Maya, illusion. In this respect, I believe, esoteric teaching differs from the Vedantan doctrines of both the Advaita and the Vasishtadvaita schools. For it says that, while Mulaprakriti, the noumenon, is self-existing, and without any origin is, in short, parentless, anupadaka, as one with Brahman Prakriti, its phenomenon, is periodical and no better than a phantasm of the former, so Mahat, the firstborn of jnana, or gnosis, knowledge, wisdom or the logos, is a phantasm reflected from the absolute nirguna, para-Brahman, the one reality, devoid of attributes and qualities, while with some Vedantins Mahat is a manifestation of Prakriti, or matter. Therefore, the last vibration of the seventh eternity was foreordained by no god in particular, but occurred in virtue of the eternal and changeless law which causes the great periods of activity and rest, called so graphically, and at the same time so poetically, the days and nights of Brahma. The expansion from within without of the mother, called elsewhere the waters of space, universal matrix, etc., does not allude to an expansion from a small center or focus, but means the development of limitless subjectivity into as limitless objectivity, without reference to size or limitation or area. The ever to us invisible, an immaterial substance present in eternity, through its periodical shadow from its own plane into the lap of Maya. It implies that this expansion, not being an increase in size for infinite extension, admits of no enlargement, was a change of condition. It expanded like the bud of the lotus, for the lotus plant exists not only as a miniature embryo in its seed, a physical characteristic, but its prototype is present in an ideal form in the astral light from dawn to night during the Manvantaric period, like everything else, as a matter of fact, in this objective universe, from man to mite, from giant trees to the tiniest blades of grass. All this, teaches the hidden science, is but the temporary reflection, the shadow of the eternal ideal prototype in divine thought. The word eternity, note well again, standing here only in the sense of eon, as lasting throughout the seemingly interminable, but still limited cycle of activity, called by us Manvantara. For what is the real esoteric meaning of Manvantara, or rather Amanuantara? It means, literally, between two manas, of whom there are 14 in every day of Brahma, such a day consisting of 1,000 aggregates of 4 ages, 1,000 great ages or Mahayugas. Let us now analyze the word or name Manu. Orientalists in their dictionaries tell us that the term Manu is from the root man, to think, hence the thinking man. But, esoterically, every Manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of his special cycle, or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine, as the Hermetic Pymander, each of the manas, therefore, being the special god, the creator and fashioner of all that appears during his own respective cycle of being or Manvantara. Foyt runs the manases, or Dayan Chohans, errands, and causes the ideal prototypes to expand from within without, that is, to cross gradually, on a descending scale, all the planes, from the nominal to the lowest phenomenal, to bloom finally on the last into full objectivity, the acme of illusion, or the grossest matter. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes over the slumbering waters of life. The Pythagorean monas is also said to dwell in solitude and darkness like the germ. The idea of the breath of darkness moving over the slumbering waters of life, which is primordial matter with the latent spirit in it, recalls the first chapter of Genesis. Its original is the Brahmanical Narayana, the mover on the waters, who is the personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious all, or Parabrahman, of the Eastern occultists. The waters of life, or chaos, the female principle and symbolism, are the vacuum, to our mental sight, in which lie the latent spirit and matter. This it was that made Democritus assert, after his instructor Leucippus, that the primordial principles of all were atoms and a vacuum, in the sense of space, but not of empty space, for nature abhors a vacuum, according to the Peripatetics and every ancient philosopher. In all cosmogonies, water plays the same important part. It is the base and source of material existence. Scientists, mistaking the word for the thing, understand by it the definite chemical combination of oxygen and hydrogen, thus giving a specific meaning to a term used by occultists in a generic sense, and which is employed in cosmogony with a metaphysical and mystical meaning. Ice is not water, neither is steam, although all three have precisely the same chemical composition. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg, the ray causes the eternal egg to thrill, and drop the non-eternal germ, which condenses into the world egg. The solitary ray dropping into the mother deep may be taken to mean divine thought or intelligence impregnating chaos. This, however, occurs on the plane of metaphysical abstraction, or rather the plane whereon that which we call a metaphysical abstraction is a reality. The virgin egg, being in one sense the abstract of all ova, or the power of becoming developed through fecundation, is eternal and forever the same. And just as the fecundation of an egg takes place before it is dropped, so the non-eternal periodical germ, which later becomes in symbolism the mundane egg, contains in itself, when it emerges from the said symbol, the promise and potency of all the universe. Though the idea per se is, of course, an abstraction, a symbolical mode of expression, it is a true symbol, for it suggests the idea of infinity as an endless circle. It brings before the mind's eye the picture of cosmos emerging from and in boundless space, a universe as shoreless in magnitude, if not as endless in its objective manifestation. The symbol of an egg also expresses the fact taught in occultism that the primordial form of everything manifested, from atom to globe, from man to angel, is spheroidal, the sphere being with all nations the emblem of eternity and infinity, a serpent swallowing its tail. To realize the meaning, however, the sphere must be thought of as seen from its center. The field of vision, or of thought, is like a sphere whose radii proceed from oneself in every direction and extend out into space, opening up boundless vistas all around. It is the symbolical circle of Pascal and the Kabbalists, whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere, a conception which enters into the compound idea of the emblem. The world egg is, perhaps, one of the most universally adopted symbols, highly suggestive as it is, equally in the spiritual, physiological, and cosmological sense. Therefore, it is found in every world theogony, where it is largely associated with the serpent symbol, the latter being everywhere, in philosophy as in religious symbolism, an emblem of eternity, infinitude, regeneration, and rejuvenation, as well as of wisdom. The mystery of apparent self-generation and evolution through its own creative power, repeating in miniature, in the egg, the process of cosmic evolution, both due to heat and moisture under the efflux of the unseen creative spirit, fully justified the selection of this graphic symbol. The virgin egg is the microcosmic symbol of the macrocosmic prototype, the virgin mother chaos or the primeval deep. The male creator, under whatever name, springs forth from the virgin female, the immaculate root fructified by the ray, who, if versed in astronomy and natural sciences, can fail to see its suggestiveness. Cosmos, as receptive nature, is an egg fructified yet left immaculate, for once regarded as boundless, it could have no other representation than a spheroid. The golden egg was surrounded by 7 natural elements, 4 ready ether, fire, air, water, 3 secret. This may be found stated in Vishnu Purana, where elements are translated envelopes, and a secret one is added ahamkara. The original text has no ahamkara, it mentions 7 elements without specifying the last 3. The 3 fall into the 4. The radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is 3, curdles and spreads in milk-white curds throughout the depths of mother, the root that grows in the depths of the ocean of life. The use of geometrical figures and the frequent allusions to figures in all ancient scriptures, as in the Puranas, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and even the Bible must be explained. In the Book of Zion, as in the Kabbalah, there are 2 kinds of numerals, to be studied the figures, often simple blinds, and the sacred numbers, the values of which are all known to the occultists through initiation. The former are but conventional glyphs, the latter, the basic symbols of all. That is to say, the one are purely physical, the other purely metaphysical. the two standing in relation to each other as matter stands to spirit, the extreme poles of the one substance. As Balzac, the unconscious occultist of French literature, says somewhere, the number is to mind the same as it is to matter, an incomprehensible agent. Perhaps so to the profane, never to the initiated mind. Number is, as the great writer thought, an entity, and, at the same time, a breath emanating from what he called God, and what we call the All, the breath which alone could organize the physical cosmos, where naught obtains its form, but through the deity, which is an effect of number. It is instructive to quote Balzac's words upon this subject. The smallest as the most immense creations, are they not to be distinguished from each other by their quantities, their qualities, their dimensions, their forces and attributes, all begotten by number? The infinitude of numbers is a fact proven to our mind, but of which no proof can be physically given. The mathematician will tell us that the infinitude of numbers exists, but is not to be demonstrated. God is a number endowed with motion, which is felt but not demonstrated. As unity, it begins the numbers, with which it has nothing in common. The existence of numbers depends on unity, which without a single number, begets them all. What? Unable either to measure the first abstraction yielded to you by the deity, or to get hold of it, you still hope to subject to your measurements the mystery of the secret sciences which emanate from that deity? And what would you feel, were I to plunge you into the abysses of motion, the force which organizes the numbers? What would you think, were I to add that motion and number are begotten by the Word, the supreme reason of the seers and prophets, who, in days of old, sensed the mighty breath of God, a witness to which is the Apocalypse? The radiant essence curdles and spreads throughout the depths of space. From an astronomical point of view, this is easy of explanation. It is the Milky Way, the world stuff, or primordial matter in its first form. It is more difficult, however, to explain it in a few words, or even lines, from the standpoint of occult science and symbolism, as it is the most complicated of glyphs. Herein are enshrined more than a dozen symbols. To begin with, it contains the whole pantheon of mysterious objects, every one of them having some definite occult meaning, extracted from the Hindu allegorical churning of the ocean by the gods. Besides Amrita, the water of life or immortality, Sarabhi, the cow of plenty called the fountain of milk and curds, was extracted from the sea of milk. Hence the universal adoration of the cow and bull, one the productive, the other the generative power in nature, symbols connected with both the solar and the cosmic deities. The specific properties, for occult purposes, of the 14 precious things, being explained only at the fourth initiation, cannot be given here, but the following may be remarked. In the Shatapatha Brahmana it is stated that the churning of the ocean of milk took place in the Satya Yuga, the first age which immediately followed the deluge. As, however, neither the Rig Veda nor Manu, both preceding Vibhaspata's deluge, that of the bulk of the fourth race mention this deluge, it is evident that it is neither the great deluge, nor that which carried away Atlantis, nor even the deluge of Noah, which is here meant. This churning relates to a period before the Earth's formation, and is in direct connection with another universal legend, the various and contradictory versions of which culminated in the Christian dogma of the war in heaven and the fall of the angels. The Brahmanas, reproached by the Orientalists with their versions on the same subjects often clashing with each other, are preeminently occult works, hence used purposely as blinds. They are allowed to survive for public use and property only because they were and are absolutely unintelligible to the masses. Otherwise they would have disappeared from circulation as long ago as the days of Akbar. The root remains, the light remains, the curds remain, and still Iyahu is one. Iyahu is rendered father mother of the gods in the commentaries, or the 6 in 1, or the septenary root from which all proceeds. All depends upon the accent given to these 7 vowels, which may be pronounced as 1, 3, or even 7 syllables by adding an E after the final O. This mystic name is given out because without a thorough mastery of the triple pronunciation, it remains forever ineffectual. As one refers to the non-separateness of all that lives and has its being, whether in an active or passive state. In one sense, Yahoo is the rootless root of all, hence, one with Parabrahman. In another sense, it is a name for the manifested one life, the eternal living unity. The root means, as already explained, pure knowledge, sattva, eternal, nitya, unconditioned reality, or satya, whether we call it Parabrahman or Mulaprakriti, for these are but the 2 symbols of the one. The light is the same omnipresent spiritual ray, which has entered and now fecundated the divine egg, and calls cosmic matter to begin its long series of differentiations. The Kurds are the first differentiation, and probably also refer to that cosmic matter which is supposed to be the origin of the Milky Way, the matter we know. This matter which, according to the revelation received from the primeval Dhyani Buddhas, is, during the periodical sleep of the universe, of the ultimate tenuity conceivable to the eye of the perfect bodhisattva. This matter, radiant and cool, becomes, at the first reawakening of cosmic motion, scattered through space, appearing, when seen from the earth, in clusters and lumps, like curds in thin milk. These are the seeds of the future worlds, the star stuff. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire, and heat, and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, of father and mother. The essence of darkness being absolute light, darkness is taken as the appropriate allegorical representation of the condition of the universe during pralaya, or the term of absolute rest, or non-being, as it appears to our finite minds. The fire, and heat, and motion here spoken of are, of course, not the fire, heat, and motion of physical science, but the underlying abstractions, the noumena, or the soul, of page 099, the essence of these material manifestations, the things in themselves which, as modern science confesses, entirely elude the instruments of the laboratory, and which even the mind cannot grasp, although it can equally as little avoid the conclusion that these underlying essences of things must exist. Fire and water, or father and mother, may be taken here to mean the divine ray and chaos. Chaos, from this union with spirit obtaining sense, shone with pleasure, and thus was produced the protogonos, the firstborn light, says a fragment of Hermes. Damascus calls it Dis, the disposer of all things. According to the Rosicrucian tenets, as handled and explained by the profane for once correctly, if only partially, light and darkness are identical in themselves, being only divisible in the human mind, and according to Robert Flood, darkness adopted illumination in order to make itself visible. According to the tenets of Eastern occultism, darkness is the one true actuality, the basis and the root of light, without which the latter could never manifest itself, nor even exist. Light is matter, and darkness pure spirit. Darkness, in its radical, metaphysical basis, is subjective and absolute light, while the latter in all its seeming effulgence and glory, is merely a mass of shadows, as it can never be eternal, and is simply an illusion, or maya. Even in the mind-baffling and science-harassing Genesis, light is created out of darkness, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and not vice versa. In him and darkness was life, and the life was the light of men. A day may come when the eyes of men will be opened, and then they may comprehend better than they do now the verse in the Gospel of John that says, "And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not." They will see then that the word darkness does not apply to man's spiritual eyesight, but indeed to darkness, the absolute, that comprehendeth not, cannot cognize, transient light, however transcendent to human eyes. Demon est Deus inversus. The devil is now called darkness by the church, whereas in the Bible, in the book of Job, he is called the Son of God, the bright star of the early morning, Lucifer. There is a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft in the reason why the first archangel, who sprang from the depths of chaos, was called Lux, Lucifer, the luminous son of the morning or manvantaric dawn. He has been transformed by the church into Lucifer or Satan, because he is higher and older than Jehovah, and had to be sacrificed to the new dogma. Behold, Olanu, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled refulgent glory bright space, son of dark space, who emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is Iahu, the younger, he shines forth as the sun, he is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The Ika is chatter, and chatter takes to itself tri, and the union produces the Sapta, in whom are the seven, which become the Tridasha, the hosts and the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil, and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above, and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones and turns the upper into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested into the great waters. Bright space, son of dark space, corresponds to the ray dropped at the first thrill of the new dawn into the great cosmic depths, from which a tree emerges differentiated as Iahu, the younger, the new life, to be to the end of the life cycle the germ of all things. He is the incorporeal man who contains in himself the divine idea, the generator of light and life, to use an expression of Philo Judaeus. He is called the blazing dragon of wisdom, because, firstly, he is that which the Greek philosophers called the logos, the verbum of the thought divine, and secondly, because in esoteric philosophy this first manifestation, being the synthesis or the aggregate of universal wisdom, Iahu, the son of the sun, contains in himself the seven creative hosts, Sephiroth, and is thus the essence of manifested wisdom. He who bathes in the light of Iahu will never be deceived by the veil of Maya. Quan Shi Yin is identical with, and an equivalent of the Sanskrit of Avalokiteshvara, and as such is an androgynous deity, like the Tetragrammaton and all the logoi of antiquity. It is only by some sects in China that he is anthropomorphized and represented with female attributes, under his female aspect becoming Kuan Yin, the goddess of mercy, called the divine voice. The latter is the patron deity of Tibet and of the island of Puto in China, where both deities have a number of monasteries. The higher gods of antiquity are all sons of the mother before they become sons of the father. The logoi, like Jupiter or Zeus, son of Cronus Saturn, infinite time, Kala, in their origin, were represented as male-female. Zeus is said to be the beautiful virgin, and Venus is made bearded. Apollo was originally bisexual, so is Brahma Vach and Manu and the Puranas. Osiris is interchangeable with Isis, and Horus is of both sexes. Finally in St. John's vision and revelation, the Logos, who is now connected with Jesus, is hermaphrodite, for he is described as having female breasts. So also is Tetragrammaton, or Jehovah. But there are two Avalokiteshvaras in esotericism, the first and the second Logos. No religious symbol can escape profanation, and even derision in our days of politics and science. In southern India, the writer has seen a converted native making puja with offerings before a statue of Jesus clad in woman's clothes and with a ring in its nose. On asking the meaning of this masquerade, we were answered that it was Jesu Maria blended in one, and that it was done by the permission of the padre, as the zealous convert had no money to purchase two statues, or idols as they, very properly, were called by a witness, another but a non-converted Hindu. Blasphemous this will appear to a dogmatic Christian, but the theosophist and the occultist must award the palm of logic to the converted Hindu. The esoteric Christos in the Gnosis is, of course, sexless, but in exoteric theology he is male and female. The dragon of wisdom is the one, the Ika. It is curious that Jehovah's name in Hebrew should also be one, Achad. His name is Achad, say the rabbins. The philologists ought to decide which of the two is derived from the other, linguistically and symbolically, surely, not the Sanskrit. The one and the dragon are expressions used by the ancients in connection with their respective logoi. Jehovah esoterically Elohim is also the serpent or dragon that tempted Eve, and the dragon is an old glyph for the astral light, primordial principle, which is the wisdom of chaos. Archaic philosophy, recognizing neither good nor evil as a fundamental or independent power, but starting from the absolute all, universal perfection eternally, traces both through the course of natural evolution to pure light condensing gradually into form, and hence becoming matter or evil. It was left with the early and ignorant Christian fathers to degrade the philosophical and highly scientific idea of this emblem into the absurd superstition called the devil. They took this from the later Zoroastrians, who saw devils or evil in the Hindu devas, and the word evil has become by a double transmutation devil, diabolos, diabol, diavolo, twofold. But the pagans have always shown a philosophical discrimination in their symbols. The primitive symbol of the serpent symbolized divine wisdom and perfection, and has always stood for psychical regeneration and immortality. Hence, Hermes calling the serpent the most spiritual of all beings, Moses, initiated into the wisdom of Hermes, following suit in Genesis, the Gnostic serpent, with the 7 vowels over its head, being the emblem of the 7 hierarchies of the septenary or planetary creators. Hence, also, the Hindu serpent Shesha Ananta, the infinite, a name of Vishnu, and his first Vahana, or vehicle, on the primordial waters. Like the logoi and the hierarchies of powers, however, these serpents have to be distinguished one from the other. Shesha Ananta, the couch of Vishnu, is an allegorical abstraction, symbolizing infinite time and space, which contains the germ and throws off periodically the efflorescence of this germ, the manifested universe, whereas the Gnostic office contains the same triple symbolism in its 7 vowels as the 1, 3, and 7-syllable Diahu of the archaic doctrine, i.e., the first unmanifested logos, the second manifested, the triangle concreting into the quaternary or tetragrammaton, and the rays of the latter on the material plane. Yet they all made a difference between the good and the bad serpent, the astral light of the Kabbalists between the former, the embodiment of divine wisdom in the region of the spiritual, and the latter, evil, on the plane of matter. For the astral light, or the ether, of the ancient pagans the name astral light is quite modern as spirit matter. Beginning with the pure spiritual plane, it becomes grosser as it descends, until it becomes Maya, or the tempting and deceitful serpent on our plane. Jesus accepted the serpent as a synonym of wisdom, and this formed part of his teaching. Be ye wise as serpents, he says. In the beginning, before mother became father-mother, the fiery dragon moved in the infinitudes alone. The Itareya Brahmana calls the earth Sarparajni, the serpent queen, and the mother of all that moves. Before our globe became egg-shaped, and the universe also, a long trail of cosmic dust, or fire mist moved and writhed like a serpent in space. The Spirit of God moving on chaos, was symbolized by every nation in the shape of a fiery serpent breathing fire and light upon the primordial waters until it had incubated cosmic matter and made it assume the annular shape of a serpent with its tail in its mouth, which symbolizes not only eternity and infinitude, but also the globular shape of all the bodies formed within the universe from that fiery mist. The universe, as also the earth and man, serpent-like, periodically cast off their old skins to assume new ones after a time of rest. The serpent is surely not a less graceful or a more unpoetical image than the caterpillar and chrysalis from which springs the butterfly, the Greek emblem of Psyche, the human soul. The dragon was also the symbol of the logos with the Egyptians, as with the Gnostics. In the Book of Hermes, Pymander, the oldest and the most spiritual of the logoi of the Western continent, appears to Hermes in the shape of a fiery dragon of light, fire, and flame. Pymander, the thought divine personified, says, "The light is I am the nous the minder Manu, I am thy God, and I am far older than the human principle which escapes from the shadow darkness, or the concealed deity. I am the germ of thought, the resplendent word, the Son of God. All that thus sees and hears in thee is the verbum of the Master, it is the thought Mahat which is God, the Father. The celestial ocean, the ether, is the breath of the Father, the life-giving principle, the Mother, the Holy Spirit, for these are not separated, and their union is life." Here we find the unmistakable echo of the archaic secret doctrine, as now expounded. Only the latter does not place at the head of the evolution of life the Father, who comes third, and is the Son of the Mother, but the eternal and ceaseless breath of the All. Mahat, understanding, universal mind, thought, etc. Before it manifests itself as Brahma or Shiva, appears as Vishnu, says the Sankhya Sara. Hence it has several aspects, just as the Logos has. Mahat is called the Lord in the primary creation, and is, in this sense, universal cognition or thought divine. But that Mahat which was first produced is, afterwards, called egoism, when it is born as the feeling itself, I, that is said to be the secondary creation. And the translator, an able and learned Brahmin, not a European Orientalist, explains in a footnote, i.e., when Mahat develops into the feeling of self-consciousness, then it assumes the name of egoism, which, translated into our esoteric phraseology, means when Mahat is transformed into the human manas, or even that of the finite gods, and becomes a ham ship. Why it is called the Mahat of the secondary creation, or the ninth, the Kamara in Vishnu Purana, will be explained hereafter. The sea of fire is, then, the super-astral, i.e., noumenal, light, the first radiation from the root Mulaprakriti, undifferentiated cosmic substance, which becomes astral matter. It is also called the fiery serpent, as above described. If the student bears in mind that there is but one universal element, which is infinite, unborn, and undying, and that all the rest, as in the world of phenomena, are but so many various differentiated aspects and transformations, correlations, they are now called, of that one, from macrocosmical down to microcosmical effects, from superhuman down to human and subhuman beings, the totality, in short, of objective existence. Then the first and chief difficulty will disappear, and occult cosmology may be mastered. Thus in the Egyptian also, as in the Indian theogony, there was a concealed deity, the One, and a creative, androgynous god, Shu being the god of creation, and Osiris in his original primary form, the god whose name is unknown. All the Kabbalists and occultists, Eastern and Western, recognize the identity of Father-Mother with primordial ether, or Akasha, astral light, and its homogeneity before the evolution of the Sun cosmically Fohit, for it is cosmic electricity. Fohit hardens and scatters the seven brothers, which means that the primordial electric entity for the Eastern occultists insist that electricity is an entity electrifies into life and separates primordial stuff or pregenetic matter into atoms, themselves the source of all life and consciousness. There exists a universal agent unique of all forms and of life that is called Ad, Ob, and Ar, active and passive, positive and negative, like day and night. It is the first light in creation, Eliphaz Levi, the first light of the primordial Elohim, the atom, male and female, or, scientifically, electricity and life. The ancients represented it by a serpent, for Fohit hisses as he glides hither and thither, in zigzags. The Kabbalah figures it with the Hebrew letter Teth, O, whose symbol is the serpent which played such a prominent part in the mysteries. Its universal value is 9, for it is the 9th letter of the alphabet and the 9th door of the 50 portals, or gateways, that lead to the concealed mysteries of being. It is the magical agent par excellence and designates in Hermetic philosophy life infused into primordial matter, the essence that composes all things, and the spirit that determines their form. But there are two secret hermetical operations, one spiritual, the other material, correlative and forever united. As Hermes says, "Thou shalt separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the solid. That which ascends from earth to heaven and descends again from heaven to earth. The subtle light is the strong force of every force, for it conquers every subtle thing and penetrates into every solid. Thus was the world formed." It was not Zeno, the founder of the Stoics, alone, who taught that the universe evolves and its primary substance is transformed from the state of fire into that of air, then into that of water, etc. Heraclitus of Ephesus maintained that the one principle that underlies all phenomena in nature is fire. The intelligence that moves the universe is fire, and fire is intelligence. And while Anaximenes said the same of air, and Thales of Miletus, 600 years BC, of water, the esoteric doctrine reconciles all these philosophers by showing that though each was right, the system of none was complete. Where was the germ, and where was now darkness? Where is the spirit of the flame that burns in thy lamp, O Lanu? The germ is that, and that is light, the white brilliant sun of the dark hidden Father. The answer to the first question, suggested by the second, which is the reply of the teacher to the pupil, contains in a single phrase one of the most essential truths of occult philosophy. It indicates the existence of things imperceptible to our physical senses which are of far greater importance, more real and more permanent, than those that appeal to these senses themselves. Before the Lanu can hope to understand the transcendentally metaphysical problem contained in the first question, he must be able to answer the second, while the very answer he gives to the second will furnish him with the clue to the correct reply to the first. In the Sanskrit commentary on this stanza, the terms used for the concealed and the unrevealed principle are many. In the earliest MSS of Indian literature, this unrevealed abstract deity has no name. It is generally called that, Tad, in Sanskrit, and means all that is, was, and will be, or that can be so received by the human mind. Among such appellations given, of course, only in esoteric philosophy is the unfathomable darkness, the whirlwind, etc. It is also called the It of the Kalahansa, the Kala Hamsa, and even the Kali Hamsa, black swan. Here the M and the N are convertible, and both sound like the nasal French N or M. As in the Hebrew, so also in the Sanskrit, many a mysterious sacred name conveys to the profane ear no more than some ordinary, and often vulgar word, because it is concealed enigmatically or otherwise. This word Hansa, or Hamsa, is just such a case. Hamsa is equal to Aham Sa, 3 words meaning I am he, while divided in still another way it will read So Ham He is I. In this single word is contained, for him who understands the language of wisdom, the universal mystery, the doctrine of the identity of man's essence with God essence. Hence the glyph of, and the allegory about, Kalahansa, or Hamsa, and the name given to Brahman, neuter, later on to the male Brahma, of page 107 Hamsa Vahana, he, who uses the Hamsa as his vehicle. The same word may be read Kalahamsa or Iami, in the eternity of time answering to the biblical, or rather Zoroastrian, I am that I am. The same doctrine is found in the Kabbalah, as witness the following extract from an unpublished MS. By Mr. S. Liddell McGregor Mathers, the learned Kabbalist, it is useless to attempt to explain the mystery in full. Materialists and the men of modern science will never understand it, since, in order to obtain clear perception of it, one has first of all to admit the postulate of a universally diffused, omnipresent, eternal deity in nature, secondly, to have fathomed the mystery of electricity in its true essence, and thirdly, to credit man with being the septenary symbol, on the terrestrial plane, of the one great unit, the Logos, which is itself the seven-voweled sign, the breath crystallized into the word. He who believes in all this has also to believe in the multiple combination of the 7 planets of occultism and of the Kabbalah, with the 12 zodiacal signs, and attribute, as we do, to each planet and to each constellation an influence which, in the words of Mr. Eli Starr, a French astrologer, is proper to it, beneficent or maleficent, and this, after the planetary spirit which rules it, who, in his turn, is capable of influencing men and things which are found in harmony with him, and with which he has any affinity. For these reasons, and since few believe in the foregoing, all that can now be given is that in both cases the symbol of Hansa, whether I, he, goose or swan, is an important symbol, representing, among other things, divine wisdom, wisdom and darkness beyond the reach of men. For all exoteric purposes, Hansa, as every Hindu knows, is a fabulous bird which, when, in the allegory, given milk mixed with water for its food, separated the two, drinking the milk and leaving the water, thus showing inherent wisdom, milk standing symbolically for spirit and water for matter. That this allegory is very ancient and dates from the very earliest archaic period is shown by the mention, in the Bhagavata Purana, of a certain caste named Hamsa or Hansa, which was the one caste par excellence, when far back in the mists of a forgotten past, there was among the Hindus only one Veda, one deity, one caste. There is also a range in the Himalayas, described in the old books as being situated north of Mount Meru, called Hamsa, and connected with episodes pertaining to the history of religious mysteries and initiations. As to Kalahansa, being the supposed vehicle of Brahma Prajapati, in the exoteric texts and translations of the Orientalists, it is quite a mistake. Brahman, the neuter, is called by them Kalahansa, and Brahma, the male, Hansa Vahana, because, forsooth, his vehicle is a swan or goose. This is a purely exoteric gloss. Esoterically and logically, if Brahman, the infinite, is all that is described by the Orientalists, and, agreeably with the Vedantic texts, is an abstract deity, in no way characterized by the ascription of any human attributes, and at the same time it is maintained that here it is called Kalahansa, then how can it ever become the Vahan of Brahma, the manifested finite God? It is quite the reverse. The swan or goose, Hansa, is the symbol of the male or temporary deity, Brahma, the emanation of the primordial ray, which is made to serve as a Vahan or vehicle for the divine ray, which otherwise could not manifest itself in the universe, being, antiphrastically, itself an emanation of darkness for our human intellect, at any rate. It is Brahma, then, who is Kalahansa, and the ray, Hansa Vahana. As to the strange symbol thus chosen, it is equally suggestive, the true mystic significance being the idea of a universal matrix, figured by the primordial waters of the deep, or the opening for the reception, and subsequently for the issuing, of that one ray, the logos, which contains in itself the other 7 procreative rays or powers, the logoi or builders. Hence the choice by the rosecroy of the aquatic fowl, whether swan or pelican with 7 young ones, for a symbol, modified and adapted to the religion of every country. Ein Sof is called the fiery soul of the pelican in the Book of Numbers. Appearing with every manvantara as Narayana, or Svayambhuva, the self-existent, and penetrating into the mundane egg, it emerges from it at the end of the divine incubation as Brahma, or Prajapati, the progenitor of the future universe, into which he expands. He is Purusha, spirit, but he is also Prakriti, matter. Therefore it is only after separating itself into 2 halves Brahma Vach, the female, and Brahma Viraj, the male, that the Prajapati becomes the male Brahma. Light is cold flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the Great Mother. It must be remembered that the words light, flame and fire have been adopted by the translators from the vocabulary of the old fire philosophers in order to render more clearly the meaning of the archaic terms and symbols employed in the original. Otherwise they would have remained entirely unintelligible to a European reader. To a student of the occult, however, the above terms will be sufficiently clear. All these light, flame, cold, fire, heat, water, and water of life are, on our plane, the progeny, or, as a modern physicist would say, the correlations of electricity. Mighty word, and a still mightier symbol. Sacred generator of a no less sacred progeny, of fire the creator, the preserver and the destroyer, of light the essence of our divine ancestors, of flame the soul of things. Electricity, the one life at the upper rung of being, and astral fluid, the Athener of the alchemists, at the lower, God and devil, good and evil. Now, why is light called cold flame? In the order of cosmic evolution, as taught by the occultist, the energy that actuates matter, after its first formation into atoms, is generated on our plane by cosmic heat. And before that period cosmos, in the sense of dissociated matter, was not. The first primordial matter, eternal and coeval with space, which has neither a beginning nor an end, is neither hot nor cold, but is of its own special nature, says the commentary. Heat and cold are relative qualities and pertain to the realms of the manifested worlds, which all proceed from the manifested Heil, which, in its absolutely latent aspect, is referred to as the cold virgin, and when awakened to life, as the mother. The ancient Western cosmogonic myths state that at first there was only cold mist, the father, and the prolific slime, the mother, Ilis, or Heil, from which crept forth the mundane snake, matter. Primordial matter, then, before it emerges from the plane of the never manifesting, and awakens to the thrill of action under the impulse of Fohit, is but a cool radiance, colorless, formless, tasteless, and devoid of every quality and aspect. Even such are her firstborn, the 4 sons, who are 1, and become 7, the entities, by whose qualifications and names the ancient Eastern occultists called the 4 of the 7 primal centers of force, or atoms, that developed later into the great cosmic elements, now divided into the 70 or so sub-elements, known to science. The 4 primal natures of the first Dayan Chohans are the so-called, for want of better terms, akashic, ethereal, watery and fiery. They answer, in the terminology of practical occultism, to the scientific definitions of gases, which to convey a clear idea to both occultists and laymen may be defined as parahydrogenic, peroxygenic, oxyhydrogenic, and ozonic, or perhaps nitrosonic, the latter forces, or gases, in occultism, supersensuous, yet atomic substances, being the most effective and active when energizing on the plane of more grossly differentiated matter. These elements are both electropositive and electronegative. These and many more are probably the missing links of chemistry. They are known by other names in alchemy and to occultists who practice phenomenal powers. It is by combining and recombining, or dissociating, the elements in a certain way, by means of astral fire, that the greatest phenomena are produced. Father-mother spin a web, whose upper end is fastened to spirit, the light of the one darkness, and the lower one to its shadowy end, matter. And this web is the universe spun out of the two substances made in one, which is Stabhavit. In the Mandukya Upanishad it is written, as a spider throws out and retracts its web, as herbs spring up in the ground, so is the universe derived from the undecaying one Brahma, for the germ of unknown darkness is the material from which all evolves and develops, as the web from the spider, as foam from the water, etc. This is only graphic and true if the term Brahma, the creator, is derived from the root Brid, to increase or expand. Brahma expands and becomes the universe woven out of his own substance. The same idea has been beautifully expressed by Goethe, who says, "Thus at the roaring loom of time I ply, and weave for God the garment thou seest him by. It expands when the breath of fire is upon it. It contracts when the breath of the mother touches it. Then the sons dissociate and scatter, to return into their mother's bosom, at the end of the great day, and re-become one with her. When it is cooling, it becomes radiant. Its sons expand and contract through their own selves and hearts. They embrace infinitude." The expanding of the universe, under the breath of fire, is very suggestive in the light of the fire mist period, of which modern science speaks so much, and knows in reality so little. Great heat breaks up the compound elements, and resolves the heavenly bodies into their primeval one element, explains the commentary. Once disintegrated into its primal constituent, by getting within the attraction and reach of a focus, or center of heat energy, of which many are carried about to and fro in space, a body, whether alive or dead, will be vaporized and held in the bosom of the mother until Fohit, gathering a few of the clusters of cosmic matter nebulae, will, by giving it an impulse, set it in motion anew, develop the required heat, and then leave it to follow its own new growth. The expanding and contracting of the web, i.e., the world stuff, or atoms, express here the pulsatory movement, for it is the regular contraction and expansion of the infinite and shoreless ocean, of that which we may call the noumenon of matter, emanated by Stabhavit, which causes the universal vibration of atoms. But it is also suggestive of something else. It shows that the ancients were acquainted with that which is now the puzzle of many scientists, and especially of astronomers, the cause of the first ignition of matter, or world stuff, the paradox of the heat produced by refrigerative contraction, and other such cosmic riddles, for it points unmistakably to a knowledge by the ancients of such phenomena. There is heat internal and heat external in every atom, say the MSS. Commentaries, to which the writer has had access, the breath of the father spirit, and the breath or heat of the mother matter, and they give explanations which show that the modern theory of the extinction of the solar fires by loss of heat through radiation is erroneous. The assumption is false even on the scientist's own admission. For, as Professor Newcomb points out, by losing heat a gaseous body contracts, and the heat generated by the contraction exceeds that which it had to lose in order to produce the contraction. This paradox, that a body gets hotter as the shrinking produced by its getting colder is greater, has led to long disputes. The surplus of heat, it is argued, is lost by radiation, and to assume that the temperature is not lowered pari passu with a decrease of volume under a constant pressure is to set at naught the law of Charles. Contraction develops heat, it is true, but contraction, from cooling, is incapable of developing the whole amount of heat at any time existing in the mass, or even of maintaining a body at a constant temperature, etc. Professor Winchell tries to reconcile the paradox, only a seeming one in fact, as J. Homer Lane proved by suggesting something besides heat. May it not be, he asks, simply a repulsion among the molecules, which varies according to some law of the distance? But even this will be found irreconcilable, unless the something besides heat is ticketed causeless heat, the breath of fire, the all-creative force plus absolute intelligence, which physical science is not likely to accept. However it may be, the reading of this stanza, notwithstanding its archaic phraseology, shows it to be more scientific than even modern science. Then Svabovit sends Fohit to harden the atoms. Each is a part of the web. Reflecting the self-existent Lord, like a mirror, each becomes in turn a world. Fohit hardens the atoms, i.e., by infusing energy into them, he scatters the atoms, or primordial matter. He scatters himself, while scattering matter into atoms. It is through Fohit that the ideas of the universal mind are impressed upon matter. Some faint idea of the nature of Fohit may be gathered from the appellation cosmic electricity, sometimes applied to it, but, in this case, to the commonly known properties of electricity must be added others, including intelligence. It is of interest to note that modern science has come to the conclusion that all cerebration and brain activity are attended by electrical phenomena. Stanza 4. Listen, ye sons of the earth, to your instructors the sons of the fire. Learn there is neither first nor last, for all is one number, issued from no number. The terms, the sons of the fire, the sons of the fire mist, and the like, require explanation. They are connected with a great primordial and universal mystery, and it is not easy to make it clear. There is a passage in the Bhagavad Gita wherein Krishna, speaking symbolically and esoterically, says, I will state the times conditions at which devotees departing from this life do so never to return be reborn, or to return to incarnate again. The fire, the flame, the day, the bright lucky fortnight, the 6 months of the northern solstice, departing, dying, in these, those who know the Brahman yogis go to the Brahman. Smoke, night, the dark unlucky fortnight, the 6 months of the southern solstice, dying, in these, the devotee goes to the lunar light or mansion, the astral light also, and returns as reborn. These two paths, bright and dark, are said to be eternal in this world or great kalpa, age. By the one, a man goes never to return, by the other he comes back. Now these terms fire, flame, day, the bright fortnight, etc., smoke, night, and so on, leading only to the end of the lunar path, are incomprehensible without a knowledge of esotericism. These are all names of various deities which preside over the cosmopsychic powers. We often speak of the hierarchy of flames, of the sons of fire, etc. Shankaracharya, the greatest of the esoteric masters of India, says that fire means a deity which presides over time, Kala. The able translator of the Bhagavad Gita, Kashinath Trimbak Telang, M.A., of Bombay, confesses he has no clear notion of the meaning of these verses. It seems quite clear, on the contrary, to him who knows the occult doctrine. With these verses the mystic sense of the solar and lunar symbols are connected. The Pitras are lunar deities and our ancestors, because they created the physical man. The Agnishvata, the Kumaras, the 7 mystic sages, are solar deities, though they are Pitras also, and these are the fashioners of the inner man. They are the sons of fire, because they are the first beings, called minds, in the Secret Doctrine, evolved from primordial fire. The Lord is a consuming fire. The Lord shall be revealed with his mighty angels in flaming fire. The Holy Ghost descended on the apostles as cloven tongues like as of fire. Vishnu will return on Kalki, the white horse, as the last avatara, amid fire and flames. And Sosyosh will also descend on a white horse in a tornado of fire. And I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse, and he that sat upon him, and his name is called the Word of God, amid flaming fire. Fire is either in its purest form, and hence is not regarded as matter, but is the unity of either the second, manifested deity in its universality. But there are two fires, and a distinction is made between them in the occult teachings. The first, or the purely formless and invisible fire, concealed in the central spiritual sun, is spoken of as triple, metaphysically, while the fire of the manifested cosmos is septenary, throughout both the universe and our solar system. The fire of knowledge burns up all action on the plane of illusion, says the commentary. Therefore, those who have acquired it and are emancipated are called fires. Speaking of the seven senses, symbolized as Hatras, or priests, Narada says in Anujita, thus these seven senses, smell and taste, and color, and sound, etc., are the causes of emancipation. And the translator adds, it is from these seven from which the self is to be emancipated. I in the sentence, I am, devoid of qualities must mean the self, not the Brahmana who speaks. The expression, all is one number, issued from no number, relates again to that universal and philosophical tenet just explained in the commentary on Shloka 4 of stanza 3. That which is absolute is of course no number, but in its later significance it has an application both in space and in time. It means that not only every increment of time is part of a larger increment, up to the most indefinitely prolonged duration conceivable by the human intellect, but also that no manifested thing can be thought of except as part of a whole, the total aggregate being the one manifested universe that issues from the unmanifested, or absolute called non-being, or no number, to distinguish it from being, or the one number. Learn what we, who descend from the primordial seven, we, who are born from the primordial flame, have learned from our fathers. This is explained in Book 2, and the term, primordial flame corroborates what is said in the first paragraph of the preceding commentary on stanza 4. The distinction between the primordial and the subsequent seven builders is that the former are the ray and direct emanation of the first sacred four, the Tetractes, that is, the eternally self-existent one, eternal in essence, note well, not in manifestation, and distinct from the universal one. Latent, during Pralaya, and active, during Manvantara, the primordial proceed from Father, Mother, Spirit, Hyal, or Ilus, whereas the other manifested quaternary and the seven proceed from the Mother alone. It is the latter who is the Immaculate Virgin Mother, who is overshadowed, not impregnated, by the universal mystery when she emerges from her state of laya, or undifferentiated condition. In reality, they are, of course, all one, but their aspects on the various planes of being are different. The first primordial are the highest beings on the scale of existence. They are the archangels of Christianity, those who refuse to create, or rather to multiply, as did Michael in the latter system, and as did the eldest mind-born sons of Brahma, Vedas. From the effulgency of light, the ray of the ever-darkness sprang in space, the reawakened energies, the one from the egg, the 6, and the 5, A. Then the 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, the twice 7, the sum total, B. And these are the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, C, the arupa, and the force, or divine man, the sum total. And from the divine man emanated the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the sacred fathers within the Holy Four. This relates to the sacred science of the numerals, so sacred, indeed, and so important in the study of occultism, that the subject can hardly be skimmed, even in such a large work as the present. It is on the hierarchies and the correct numbers of these beings invisible to us, except upon very rare occasions, that the mystery of the whole universe is built. The Kumaras, for instance, are called the Four, though in reality 7 in number, because Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana and Sanakumara are the chief Vidhatra, their patronymic name, who sprang from the fourfold mystery. To make the whole clearer, we have to turn for our illustrations to tenets more familiar to some of our readers, namely the Brahmanical. According to Manu, Hiranyagarbha is Brahma, the first male, formed by the undiscernible causeless cause, in a golden egg resplendent as the sun, as states the Hindu classical dictionary, Hiranyagarbha meaning the golden, or rather the effulgent, womb or egg. The meaning tallies awkwardly with the epithet male. Surely the esoteric meaning of the sentence is clear enough. In the Rig Veda it is said that the one Lord of all beings, the one animating principle of gods and men, arose, in the beginning, in the golden womb, Hiranyagarbha, which is the mundane egg, or sphere of our universe. That being is surely androgynous, and the allegory of Brahma separating into two, and creating in one of his halves, the female Vach, himself as Viraj, is a proof of it. The one from the egg, the 6 and the 5, give the number 1065, the value of the firstborn, later on the male and female Brahma Prajapati, who answers to the numbers 7 and 14 and 21 respectively. The Prajapati, like the Sephiroth, are only 7, including the synthetic Sephira of the triad from which they spring. Thus from Hiranyagarbha, Prajapati, the triune, the primeval Vedic Trimurti, and night, Vayu, and Surya, emanate the other 7, or again 10, if we separate the first 3 which exist in 1, and 1 in 3. All, moreover, being comprehended within that one supreme, Parama, called Guhya or secret, and Sarvatman, the super soul. The 7 lords of being lie concealed in Sarvatman like thoughts in one brain. So with the Sephiroth, they are either 7, when counting from the upper triad, headed by Kedar, or 10 exoterically. In the Mahabharata, the Prajapati are 21 in number, or 10, 6, and 5, thrice 7. The 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, in their total twice 7, represent 31,415, the numerical hierarchy of the Dayan Chohans of various orders, and of the inner circumscribed world. Placed on the boundary of the Great Circle, pass not called also the Dhyana Pasha, the rope of the angels, the rope that hedges off the phenomenal from the nominal cosmos, which does not fall within the range of our present objective consciousness. This number, when not enlarged by permutation and expansion, is ever 31,415, anagrammatically and kabbalistically, being both the number of the circle and the mystic swastika. The twice 7 once more, for whatever way the 2 sets of figures are counted, when added separately, one figure after another, whether crossways from right or from left, they will always yield 14. Mathematically they represent the well-known mathematical formula, that the ratio of the diameter of a circle to the circumference. Thus, while in the metaphysical world, the circle with the one central point in it has no number, and is called an upadaka, parentless and numberless, for it can fall under no calculation, in the manifested world, the mundane Egger circle is circumscribed within the groups called the line, the triangle, the pentagram, the second line and the square, and when the point has generated a line, and thus becomes a diameter which stands for the androgynous logos. Then the figures become 31,415, or a triangle, a line, a square, a second line, and a pentagram. When the son separates from the mother, he becomes the father, the diameter standing for nature, or the feminine principle. Therefore it is said, in the world of being, the 1 point fructifies the line, the virgin matrix of cosmos the egg-shaped zero, and the Immaculate Mother gives birth to the form that combines all forms. Prajapati is called the first procreating male, and his mother's husband. This gives the keynote to all the later divine sons from Immaculate Mothers. It is strongly corroborated by the significant fact that Anna, the name of the mother of the Virgin Mary, now represented by the Roman Catholic Church as having given birth to her daughter in an immaculate way, Mary conceived without sin, is derived from the Chaldean Anna, heaven, or astral light, Anima Mundi, whence Anasha, Devi Durga, the wife of Shiva, is also called Annapurna, and Kanya, the Virgin, Uma Kanya being her esoteric name, and meaning the Virgin of Light, astral light in one of its multitudinous aspects. The Devas, Pitras, Rishis, the Suras and the Asuras, the Daityas and Adityas, the Danavas and Gandharvas, etc., have all their synonyms in our secret doctrine, as well as in the Kabbalah and Hebrew angelology, but it is useless to give their ancient names, as it would only create confusion. Many of these may be now also found even in the Christian hierarchy of divine and celestial powers. All those thrones and dominions, virtues and principalities, cherubs, seraphs and demons, the various denizens of the sidereal world, are the modern copies of archaic prototypes. The very symbolism in their names, when transliterated and arranged in Greek and Latin, are sufficient to show it, as will be proved in several cases further on. The sacred animals are found in the Bible as well as in the Kabbalah, and they have their meaning a very profound one, too, on the page of the origins of life. In the Sefer Yetzirah it is stated that God engraved in the holy for the throne of his glory, the Ophanim, the wheels or world spheres, the seraphim, and the sacred animals, as ministering angels, and from these air, water, and fire or ether he formed his habitation. The following is the literal translation from the Ixt and XTH sections. 10 numbers without what? 1. The Spirit of the living God who liveth in eternities. Voice and spirit and word, and this is the Holy Spirit. 2. Air out of spirit. He designed and hewed therewith 22 letters of foundation, 3 mothers, and 7 double and 12 single, and 1 spirit out of them. 3. Water out of spirit. He designed and hewed with them the barren and the void, mud and earth. He designed them as a flower bed, hewed them as a wall, covered them as a paving. 4. Fire out of water. He designed and hewed therewith the throne of glory and the wheels, and the seraphim and the holy animals as ministering angels, and of the 3 he founded his dwelling, as it is said, he makes his angels spirits, and his servants fiery flames. The words founded his dwelling show clearly that in the Kabbalah, as in India, the deity was considered as the universe, and was not, in his origin, the extra-cosmic god he now is. Thus was the world made through 3 seraphim, Sephir, Saphir, and Sipper, or through numbers, and numbered. With the astronomical key, these sacred animals become the signs of the zodiac. This was the army of the voice, the divine mother of the 7. The sparks of the 7 are subject to, and the servants of, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th of the 7. These are called spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, and modelers, for thus stands the eternal Nidana the Oihahu. This shloka gives again a brief analysis of the hierarchies of the Dhyan Chohans, called devas, gods, in India, or the conscious intelligent powers in nature. To this hierarchy correspond the actual types into which humanity may be divided, for humanity, as a whole, is in reality a materialized, though as yet imperfect, expression thereof. The army of the voice is a term closely connected with the mystery of sound and speech, as an effect and corollary of the cause divine thought, as beautifully expressed by P. Christian, the learned author of Histoire de la Magie and L'Homme Rouge des Tuileries. The words spoken by, as well as the name of, every individual largely determine his future fate. Why? Because, when our soul mind creates, or evokes a thought, the representative sign of that thought is self-engraved upon the astral fluid, which is the receptacle, and, so to say, the mirror of all the manifestations of being. The sign expresses the thing. The thing is the hidden, or occult virtue of the sign. To pronounce a word is to evoke a thought and make it present. The magnetic potency of human speech is the commencement of every manifestation in the occult world. To utter a name is not only to define a being and entity, but to place it under and condemn it through the emission of the word verbum to the influence of one or more occult potencies. Things are, for every one of us, that which the word makes them while naming them. The word verbum or the speech of every man is, quite unconsciously to himself, a blessing or a curse. This is why our present ignorance about the properties and attributes of the idea, as well as about the attributes and properties of matter, is often fatal to us. Yes, names and words are either beneficent or maleficent. They are, in a certain sense, either venomous or health-giving, according to the hidden influences attached by supreme wisdom to their elements, that is to say, to the letters which compose them, and the numbers correlative to these letters. This is strictly true as an esoteric teaching accepted by all the Eastern schools of occultism. In the Sanskrit, as also in the Hebrew and all other alphabets, every letter has its occult meaning and its rationale. It is a cause and an effect of a preceding cause, and a combination of these very often produces the most magical effect. The vowels, especially, contain the most occult and formidable potencies. The mantras, magical rather than religious invocations, esoterically, are chanted by the Brahmins, and so are the rest of the Vedas and other scriptures. The army of the voice is the prototype of the host of the Logos, or the word, of the Sefer Yetzirah, called in the Secret Doctrine the one number issued from no number, the one eternal principle. The esoteric theogony begins with the one manifested, therefore not eternal in its presence and being, if eternal in its essence, the number of the numbers and numbered, the latter proceeding from the voice, the feminine vach, of the 100 forms, Shatarupa, or nature. It is from this number, 10, or creative nature, the mother, the occult cipher, or zero, ever procreating and multiplying in union with the unit one or the spirit of life, that the whole universe proceeds. In the Anujita, a conversation is given between a Brahmana and his wife on the origin of speech and its occult properties. The wife asks how speech came into existence, and which was prior to the other, speech or mind. The Brahmana tells her that the Apana, inspirational breath, becoming Lord, changes that intelligence, which does not understand speech or words, into the state of Apana, and thus opens the mind. Thereupon he tells her a story, a dialogue between speech and mind. Both went to the self of being, i.e., to the individual higher self, as Nilakantha thinks, to Prajapati, according to the commentator Arjuna Mishra, and asked him to destroy their doubts and decide which of them proceeded and was superior to the other. To this the Lord said, "Mind is superior." But speech answered the self of being by saying, "I verily yield you your desires, meaning that by speech he acquired what he desired. Thereupon again, the self told her that there are two minds, the movable and the immovable. The immovable is with me, he said, the movable is in your dominion, i.e. of speech, on the plane of matter. To that you are superior. But inasmuch, O beautiful one, as you came personally to speak to me, in the way you did, i.e. proudly, therefore, O Sarasvati, you shall never speak after, hard, exhalation. The goddess speech Sarasvati, a later form or aspect of Vach, the goddess also of secret learning, or esoteric wisdom, verily, dwelt always between the prana and the apana. But, O noble one, going with the apana wind vital air, though impelled without the prana expirational breath, she ran up to Prajapati Brahma, saying, "Be pleased, O venerable sir." Then the prana appeared again nourishing speech. And, therefore, speech never speaks after hard exhalation. It is always noisy or noiseless. Of these two, the noiseless is the superior to the noisy. Speech, the speech, which is produced in the body by means of the prana, and which then goes, is transformed into apana, and then becoming assimilated with the udana physical organs of speech, then finally dwells in the samana at the navel in the form of sound, as the material cause of all words, says Arjuna Mishra. So speech formerly spoke. Hence the mind is distinguished by reason of its being immovable, and the goddess, speech, by reason of her being movable. The above allegory is at the root of the occult law, which prescribes silence upon the knowledge of certain secret and invisible things, perceptible only to the spiritual mind, the sixth sense, and which cannot be expressed by noisy or uttered speech. This chapter of Anujita explains, says Arjuna Mishra, pranayama, or regulation of the breath in yoga practices. This mode, however, without the previous acquisition of, or at least full understanding of, the two higher senses, of which there are 7, as will be shown, pertains rather to the lower yoga. The hatha so-called was and still is discountenanced by the Arats. It is injurious to the health, and alone can never develop, page 123, into Raja Yoga. This story is quoted to show how inseparably connected in the metaphysics of old are intelligent beings, or rather intelligences, with every sense or function, whether physical or mental. The occult claim that there are 7 senses in man, and in nature, as there are 7 states of consciousness, is corroborated in the same work, Chapter 7, on Pratyahara, the restraint and regulation of the senses, pranayama being that of the vital winds or breath. The Brahmana, speaking of the institution of the 7 sacrificial priests, Hatris, says, "The nose and the eye, and the tongue, and the skin and the ear as the 5th are smell, sight, taste, touch, and hearing, mind and understanding, are the 7 sacrificial priests separately stationed, which dwelling in a minute space, still, do not perceive each other on this sensuous plane, none of them except mind. For mind says, the nose smells not without me, the eye does not take in color, etc., etc. I am the eternal chief among all elements, i.e., senses. Without me, the senses never shine, like an empty dwelling, or like fires the flames of which are extinct. Without me, all beings, like fuel half-dried and half-moist, fail to apprehend qualities or objects, even with the senses exerting themselves. This, of course, only with regard to mind on the sensuous plane. Spiritual mind, the upper portion or aspect of the impersonal manas, takes no cognizance of the senses in physical man. How well the ancients were acquainted with the correlation of forces and all the recently discovered phenomena of mental and physical faculties and functions, and with many more mysteries, also may be found in reading chapters VI and VE of this priceless work in philosophy and mystic learning. See the quarrel of the senses about their respective superiority and their taking the Brahman, the lord of all creatures, for their arbiter. You are all greatest, and not greatest, or superior to objects, as Arjuna Mishra says, none being independent of the other. You are all possessed of one another's qualities. All are greatest in their own spheres and all support one another. There is one unmoving life wind or breath, the yoga inhalation, so called, which is the breath of the one or higher self. That one is my own self, accumulated in numerous forms. This breath, voice, self or wind, pneuma, is the synthesis of the seven senses, nominally all minor deities, and esoterically the septenary and the army of the voice. Next we see cosmic matter scattering and forming itself into elements, grouped into the mystic four within the fifth element ether, the lining of Akasha, the anima mundi, or mother of cosmos. Dots, lines, triangles, cubes, circles and finally spheres. Why, or how? Because, says the commentary, such is the first law of nature, and because nature geometrizes universally in all her manifestations. There is an inherent law, not only in the primordial, but also in the manifested matter of our phenomenal plane by which nature correlates her geometrical forms, and later, also, her compound elements, and in which also there is no place for accident or chance. It is a fundamental law in occultism that there is no rest or cessation of motion in nature. That which seems rest is only the change of one form into another, the change of substance going hand in hand with that of form, so at least we are taught in occult physics, which thus seem to have anticipated the discovery of the conservation of matter by a considerable time. Says the ancient commentary, the mother is the fiery fish of life. She scatters her spawn and the breath motion heats and quickens it. The grains of spawn are soon attracted to each other and form the curds in the ocean of space. The larger lumps coalesce and receive new spawn in fiery dots, triangles, and cubes, which ripen, and at the appointed time some of the lumps detach themselves and assume spheroidal form, a process which they effect only when not interfered with by the others, after which, law no, comes into operation. Motion, the breath, becomes the whirlwind and sets them into rotation. The oihahu, which is darkness, the boundless, or the no number, adi nidana svabhavat, the circle, the adi sanat, the number, for he is one. The voice of the word, svabhavat, the numbers, for he is 1 and 9. The formless square and these three, enclosed within the circle, are the sacred four, and the 10 are the arupa universe. Then come the sons, the 7 fighters, the 1, the 8 left out, and his breath, which is the light maker. Adi Sanat, translated literally, is the first or primeval ancient, a name which identifies the Kabbalistic Ancient of Days, and the Holy Aged, Sephira and Adam Kadmon, with Brahma, the Creator, called also Sanat among his other names and titles. Svabhavat is the mystic essence, the plastic root of physical nature. Numbers when manifested, the number in its unity of substance, on the highest plane. The name is of Buddhist use, and a synonym for the fourfold anima mundi, the Kabbalistic archetypal world, from whence proceed the creative, formative, and material worlds, and the scintillar sparks, the various other worlds contained in the last 3. The worlds are all subject to rulers or regents, rishis and pitras with the Hindus, angels with the Jews and Christians, gods with the ancients in general. Circle. This means that the boundless circle, the zero, becomes a number only when one of the other 9 figures precedes it, and thus manifests its value and potency. The word or logos, in union with voice and spirit, the expression and source of consciousness, standing for the 9 figures, and thus forming, with the cipher, the decade which contains in itself all the universe. The triad forms the tetractys, or sacred four, within the circle, the square within the circle being the most potent of all the magical figures. The one rejected is the sun of our system. The exoteric version may be found in the oldest Sanskrit scriptures. In the Rig Veda, Aditi, the boundless or infinite space translated by Prof. Max Muller, the visible infinite, visible by the naked eye, the endless expanse beyond the earth, beyond the clouds, beyond the sky, is the equivalent of Mother Space coeval with darkness. She is very properly called the mother of the gods Deva Matri, as it is from her cosmic matrix that all the heavenly bodies of our system were born sun and planets. Thus she is described, allegorically, in this wise: 8 sons were born from the body of Aditi. She approached the gods with 7, but cast away the 8th, Martanda, our son. The 7 sons called the Adityas are, cosmically or astronomically, the 7 planets, and the sun being excluded from their number shows plainly that the Hindus may have known, and in fact knew, of a 7th planet, without calling it Uranus. But esoterically and theologically, so to say, the Adityas, in their primitive most ancient meanings, are the 8 and 12 great gods of the Hindu pantheon. The 7 allow the mortals to see their dwellings, but show themselves only to the Arats, says an old proverb, their dwellings standing here for the planets. The ancient commentary gives the following allegory and explains it. 8 houses were built by Mother. 8 houses for her 8 divine sons, 4 large and 4 small ones. 8 brilliant sons, according to their age and merits. Balailu Martanda was not satisfied, though his house was the largest. He began to work as the huge elephants do. He drew in into his stomach the vital airs of his brothers. He sought to devour them. The larger 4 were far away, far, on the margin of their kingdom. They were not robbed affected, and laughed. "Do your worst, sir, you cannot reach us," they said. But the smaller wept. They complained to the mother. She exiled Balailu to the center of her kingdom, from whence he could not move. Since then he only watches and threatens. He pursues them, turning slowly round himself, they turning swiftly from him, and he following from afar the direction in which his brothers move on the path that encircles their houses. From that day he feeds on the sweat of the mother's body. He fills himself with her breath and refuse. Therefore, she rejected him. Thus the rejected son being our son, evidently, as shown above, the sons refer not only to our planets, but to the heavenly bodies in general. Surya, himself only a reflection of the central spiritual sun, is the prototype of all those bodies that evolved after him. In the Vedas he is called Lokachaksha, the eye of the world, our planetary world, and he is one of the 3 chief deities. He is called indifferently the son of Dios or of Aditi, because no distinction is made with reference to, or scope allowed for, the esoteric meaning. Thus he is depicted as drawn by 7 horses, and by 1 horse with 7 heads, the former referring to his 7 planets, the latter to their one common origin from the one cosmic element. This one element is called figuratively fire. The Vedas teach that fire verily is all the deities. The meaning of the allegory is plain, for we have both the Zion commentary and modern science to explain it, though the two differ in more than one particular. The occult doctrine rejects the hypothesis born of the nebular theory that the 7 great planets have evolved from the sun's central mass, of this our visible sun, at any rate. The first condensation of cosmic matter of course took place about a central nucleus, its parent sun, but our sun, it is taught, merely detached itself earlier than all the others, as the rotating mass contracted, and as their elder, bigger brother therefore, not their father. The 8 Adityas, the gods, are all formed from the eternal substance, cometary matter or the world stuff, which is both the fifth and the sixth cosmic principle, the upadhi, or basis, of the universal soul, just as in man, the microcosm, manas is the upadhi of buddhi. There is a whole poem on the pregenetic battles fought by the growing planets before the final formation of cosmos, thus accounting for the seemingly disturbed position of the systems of several planets. The plane of the satellites of some, of Neptune and Uranus, for instance, of which the ancients knew nothing, it is said, being tilted over, thus giving them an appearance of retrograde motion. These planets are called the warriors, the architects, and are accepted by the Roman Church as the leaders of the heavenly hosts, thus showing the same traditions. Having evolved from cosmic space, the Sun, we are taught before the final formation of the primaries, and the annihilation of the planetary nebulae drew into the depths of his mass all the cosmic vitality he could, threatening to engulf his weaker brothers, before the law of attraction and repulsion was finally adjusted, after which, he began feeding on the mother's refuse and sweat, in other words, on those portions of either, the breath of the universal soul, of the existence and constitution of which science is as yet absolutely ignorant. As a theory of this kind has been propounded by Sir William Grove, who theorizes that the systems are gradually changing by atmospheric additions or subtractions, or by accretions and diminutions arising from nebular substance, and again that the sun may condense gaseous matter as it travels in space, and so heat may be produced. The archaic teaching seems scientific enough, even in this age. Mr. W. Matthew Williams suggested that the diffused matter or ether, which is the recipient of the heat radiations of the universe, is thereby drawn into the depths of the solar mass, expelling thence the previously condensed and thermally exhausted ether. It becomes compressed and gives up its heat, to be in turn itself driven out in a rarefied and cooled state, to absorb a fresh supply of heat, which he supposes to be in this way taken up by the ether, and again concentrated and redistributed by the suns of the universe. This is about as close an approximation to the occult teachings as page 129 science ever imagined, for occultism explains it by the dead breath given back by Martanda, and his feeding on the sweat and refuse of mother space. What could affect Neptune, Saturn and Jupiter, but little, would have killed such comparatively small houses as Mercury, Venus and Mars. As Uranus was not known before the end of the 18th century, the name of the fourth planet mentioned in the allegory must remain to us, so far, a mystery. The breath of all the seven is said to be Bhaskara, the light maker, because they, the planets, were all comets and suns in their origin. They evolved into manvantaric life from primeval chaos, now the noumenon of irresolvable nebulae, by aggregation and accumulation of the primary differentiations of eternal matter, according to the beautiful expression in the commentary. Thus the sons of light clothed themselves in the fabric of darkness. They are called allegorically the heavenly snails on account of their, to us, formless intelligences inhabiting unseen their starry and planetary homes, and so to speak, carrying them, as the snails do, along with themselves in their revolution. The doctrine of a common origin for all the heavenly bodies and planets was, as we see, inculcated by the archaic astronomers before Kepler, Newton, Leibniz, Kant, Herschel and Laplace. Heat, the breath, attraction and repulsion, the three great factors of motion, are the conditions under which all the members of this primitive family are born, develop, and die, to be reborn after a night of Brahma, during which eternal matter relapses periodically into its primary undifferentiated state. The most attenuated gases can give no idea of its nature to the modern physicist. Centers of forces at first, the invisible sparks, or primordial atoms, differentiate into molecules, and become suns passing gradually into objectivity gaseous, radiant, cosmic, the one whirlwind, or motion, finally giving the impulse to the form, and the initial motion, regulated and sustained by the never-resting breaths the Dayan Chohans. Then the second seven, who are the Lipika, produced by the three. The rejected sun is one. The sun's sons are countless. The Lipika, from the word lipi, writing, means literally the scribes. Mystically, these divine beings are connected with karma, the law of retribution, for they are the recorders, or analysts, who impress on the, to us, invisible tablets of the astral light, the great picture gallery of eternity, a faithful record of every act, and even thought, of man, of all that was, is, or ever will be, in the phenomenal universe. As Set and Isis unveiled, this divine and unseen canvas is the book of life. As it is the Lipika who project into objectivity from the passive universal mind the ideal plan of the universe, upon which the builders reconstruct the cosmos after every pralaya. It is they who stand parallel to the seven angels of the presence, whom the Christians recognize in the seven planetary spirits, or the spirits of the stars, and thus it is they who are the direct amanuenses of the eternal ideation, or, as Plato calls it, the divine thought. The eternal record is no fantastic dream, for we meet with the same records in the world of gross matter. As Dr. Draper says, a shadow never falls upon a wall without leaving thereupon a permanent trace which might be made visible by resorting to proper processes. The portraits of our friends or landscape views may be hidden on the sensitive surface from the eye, but they are ready to make their appearance as soon as proper developers are resorted to. A specter is concealed on a silver or a glassy surface until, by our necromancy, we make it come forth into the visible world. Upon the walls of our most private apartments, where we think the eye of intrusion is altogether shut out, and our retirement can never be profaned, there exist the vestiges of our acts, silhouettes of whatever we have done. Doctors Jevons and Babbage believe that every thought displaces the particles of the brain and, setting them in motion, scatters them throughout the universe. They also think that each particle of the existing matter must be a register of all that has happened. Thus the ancient doctrine has begun to acquire rights of citizenship in the speculations of the scientific world. The 40 assessors, who stand in the region of Amenti as the accusers of the soul before Osiris, belong to the same class of deities as the Lipika, and might stand as parallels, were not the Egyptian gods so little understood in their esoteric meaning. The Hindu Chitragupta, who reads out the account of every soul's life from his register, called Agrasandani, the assessors who read theirs from the heart of the defunct, which becomes an open book before either Yama, Minos, Osiris, or Karma, are also many copies of, and variants from, the Lipika and their astral records. Nevertheless, the Lipika are not deities connected with death, but with life eternal. Connected as the Lipika are with the destiny of every man, and the birth of every child, whose life is already traced in the astral light, not fatalistically, but only because the future, like the past, is ever alive in the present. They may also be said to exercise an influence on the science of horoscopy. We must admit the truth of the latter whether we will or not. For, as observed by one of the modern professors of astrology, now that photography has revealed to us the chemical influence of the sidereal system, by fixing on the sensitized plate of the apparatus milliards of stars and planets that had hitherto baffled the efforts of the most powerful telescopes to discover, it becomes easier to understand how our solar system can, at the birth of a child, influence his brain virgin of any impression in a definite manner and according to the presence on the zenith of such or another zodiacal constellation. And that's not all, our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.